Hello and welcome. This webinar is brought to you by the British Somali Educators Association and is for people who have already been accepted onto a teacher training course or those who are interested in applying but do not know how to start. We are a collective of educators who have joined forces to support and establish educational equality for Somali students. A key component to this is having representation in the classroom. This is our second seminar and is tailored to support and encourage prospective teachers to join the profession. We will start with a breakdown of different routes into teaching, followed by a recorded question and answer session with initial teacher experts, education experts, and early career teachers. Dr. Francis Gilbert is the lead for PGCE English course at Goldsmiths University. Haba Musa is an NQT primary teacher. Zainab Yusuf is a third year secondary maths teacher. And Yasmin Sheel is a SCITT lead, which is school-centred initial teacher training, working across schools in England. The question and answer session is hosted by Shoaib, an ex-student of Yasmin's, who is currently working at Manchester Metropolitan University. So to train to teach in England, you can choose to go via a university or a school-led route. Each route has many different providers. So later in the question and answer session, you will get to hear the panel answer questions you need to ask initial teacher education providers. There seems to be some falsehood that you can only undertake a PGCE course at university. You can study for a PGCE via a school-led route as well. However, the provider will work in partnership with the university to deliver the programme. Most teachers in this country will have a Bachelor of Education or a PGCE, so it is highly recommended to undertake the PGCE. It will stand you in very good stead for your future career. School-led routes will recruit people on a salaried programme, and this means you will receive a salary to train to teach, as well as a tuition fee being paid for you. Both school and universities offer the non-salaried route, which means that you pay the provider a tuition fee, and on some courses you can actually have a bursary and some you can apply for a scholarship. You need to have a degree or equivalent qualification to train on a postgraduate initial teacher training course. For equivalent qualifications, you will need to confirm your qualification is equivalent to a degree. If you don't have a degree or equivalent qualification, you can train on a university-led undergraduate course and graduate with a qualified teacher status. There's also the opportunity to work as a further education teacher, whether or not you already have a degree. You will need to demonstrate that you have GCSEs at grade C or level 4 or a standard equivalent in maths and English for secondary schools and a science subject for primary trainees. So you need to have your maths and English for all, but for primary you need to also additionally have science. If you don't meet this entry requirement, your training provider may ask you to sit a GCSE equivalent test or offer other evidence to demonstrate your ability, but this is really dependent on training providers. If all or part of your qualification are from the UK, you should contact the school or universities you would like to train with, as they make the final decision if your qualifications meet the minimum requirements. You may be asked to formally recognise any overseas qualifications to the UK NARIC. You are best to contact the Get Into Teaching team, who can provide you with guidance on your equivalent qualifications. You will need to ask your provider, what their programme delivery is. Some providers will front load their delivery before you go into school. So universities could do that beforehand and give you 40 days, for example, of theory input before going into school later on in October, November. Others will layer support throughout the year and deliver sessions each week. In order for you to complete the QTS, you will be inducted into the school systems. The QTS provider will also provide you with sessions of theoretical and practical input. on such things as assessment behaviour, curriculum, professional behaviours, and the science behind teaching pedagogy. You will have a minimum of 2 school placements, and finally a portfolio of evidence which is different for each provider. The PGC is delivered by academics, which will cover teaching theory delivered via lectures and tutorials. Some universities ask for 5 assignments and others ask for 2. But don't forget, for the PGCE, you can do that through the school-led route. It's not just the university. And most universities now are working in partnership with school-led providers, and you don't have to necessarily go into the university. The university could come to the school where you are undertaking your placement, or the main teaching hub that you take your placement. So please check your programme delivery. If you do wish to proceed with applying to teach, you will go through an assessment process. It will involve some sort of teaching activity or presentation, but you will also undertake a formal interview. Some providers will expect you to undertake literacy and numeracy assessments, especially for primary colleagues. Some providers will also ask you to complete an audit in terms of your subject knowledge, so that they have a baseline before you start the course. So if you are a non-salaried trainee and are going via the school or university-led route, then there are 3 types of funding available for teacher training. Depending on your circumstances, you could receive all 3. One is a tax-free bursary or scholarship, which we'll talk about in a second. The other is a tuition fee loan and maintenance loan. But you could also achieve, if eligible, extra financial support. If you go on to the Get Into Teaching website, you will find this information there. Alternatively, as discussed earlier, you could go via the school-led route and earn a salary while you train. This academic year, here are the list of bursary and scholarships you can receive if you decide to teach any of these subjects. You do not have to apply separately for them. Your initial teacher education provider they will automatically receive this on your behalf once you are accepted onto the programme in September, and then deliver in 10 monthly instalments. You can receive a bursary or scholarship if you are going via the school-led route as well as the university-led route. The scholarship you will have to apply for. So the scholarship, you do have to apply for that. And you need to look at the Get Into Teaching website on how to apply for the scholarship. But then the funding is given to your initial teacher education provider, who then also deliver it to you in 10 monthly instalments. Have a look at the Get Into Teaching website for further details about the subject knowledge enhancement courses. You can study for the courses shown here, but the decision will be made in consultation with your initial teacher education provider, be it the school-led route or the university-led route. You must not have a related degree, you must not have taken a related degree in the subject that you wish to teach in the last 5 years. Once you've started the course, you must complete it before achieving your qualified teaching status, and we highly recommend you complete prior to starting the course. Now over to the question and answer session hosted by Shoaib Gumoti, a project coordinator at Manchester Metropolitan University, with Dr. Francis Gilbert, who's the lead for PGCE English course at Goldsmiths. Habal Musa is an NQT primary trainee. Zainab Yusuf is a 3rd year secondary maths teacher. And Yasmin Shiel, myself, is the SCITT lead working across a group of schools in England. A SCITT lead is school-centred initial teacher training. Hope you enjoy our question and answer.
And yeah, we'll start off with some questions now. So just to remind everyone that you can post questions in the comments section, and we'll be able to see that. And if you want to direct it to everyone, that's fine. If you have a specific person in mind as well, please feel free to do that. So our Twitter handle is BSOM Educators, and that's our email address there as well at the bottom of the screen. So please feel free to get in touch. Perfect. So we'll start off with the first question for Habon and Zainab. So what was your route into teaching, and why did you choose your particular route? So we'll start off with Zainab.
Hi, I did the schools direct route, so I was training and I did the PGC as well. And I decided to do this one because it was at my placement school throughout the whole year, so I knew what school I was going to. I did have a placement for 4 weeks, but they told me well in advance, and I liked the fact that I could stay at the same school. Also, I just wanted to get started. I had experience working with kids while I was at uni, so I kind of just wanted to get straight into the classroom rather than at university. That's just my preference. So I really wanted to go for that route.
Perfect.
I did the PGCE route. So I chose this route because I like the academic focus, and I just recently graduated, so I didn't want to jump into school straight away. So it was very much still being in a university environment, having essays to do, which was something that I was more comfortable with. And I also like the fact that I would still be having academic tutors and like working closely with people that have had ample amount of experience in the classroom. So that's why I chose that route.
So I guess there it's just specifically tailored towards people's needs, and you kind of just have to pick which one's best for you. Do you have any regrets about your particular route, or do you think that was a perfect route for you?
No, I think that was the perfect route for me because it was a nice transition to go into university still and then work on subject-specific knowledge in the beginning and learning about the different subjects, having like mock classroom environment, and then slowly being taken off to a placement school. So I think that was the right kind of slow transition for me, whereas I didn't want to jump straight into a school-led placement and be in classroom straight away. Yeah, and especially not having experience, so I didn't have a lot of experience in the classroom. So yeah.
Perfect, thank you. Talking about jumping into things, I think I jumped into the questions without allowing you guys an opportunity to introduce yourselves. So Yasmin's introduced herself, but Zainab, Dr. Francis, and Habon, do you want to give yourselves a quick introduction?
Yeah, sure.
Zainab first, sorry, pardon me.
My name's Zainab. I'm a third-year maths teacher at Totteridge Academy School up north of London. And I did the school's direct route, like I said.
Perfect, thank you. Dr. Francis.
Hi there, I'm Francis. I was a school teacher for 25 years and a head of department and various different roles. And now I'm a teacher educator at Goldsmiths, and I run the PGC English program, and I'm the head of the MA in Creative Writing and Education. So I'm really interested in, having the people from the Somalian community or that background coming into teaching, and we've definitely had some wonderful teachers from that background come into our Goldsmiths and do extremely well, and we're really proud of the fact that they really shine on our course. So I'm happy to talk about the sorts of things that really makes that happen if people are interested.
Perfect, thank you so much. And finally, Habon.
So my name is Habon Muse. I did my PGC primary course at St. Mary's University, and I'm now I'm in my NQT year, so I'm in my first year teaching.
Perfect, cool. So we'll jump into the second question then. So I guess this is for everyone. What top tips can you share with everyone for the assessment process? So we'll start off with Yasmin. You kind of touched on it a little bit in your presentation, but what else could you add, do you think?
Well, I think in the presentation, it's that when you do the presentation or you do the little teaching exercise, it is all to do with communication, your clarity of communication. And so that's what people like myself and Francis will be looking at during the interview process. For a school-based provider, we're probably looking for people who've done their homework, in terms of the schools that they're going to be based with. We generally will be looking for people who want to stay within teaching. So it's somebody who has a long-term ambition of having teaching as a career. As Francis has said, 25 years is massive in terms of being in the classroom on the chalk face in teaching. So yeah, all of those things are something that we would like to see. I think Francis, you.
Yeah, I would absolutely 100% endorse what you're saying there. And I would also add, we do check for subject knowledge. So one thing that we have on the PGCE course at Goldsmiths is we send a poem to people who are applying, and they have to come prepared to talk about how they might teach it. And I would say a top tip is a lot of people do wonderful lesson plans, but we're actually also looking for people to show understanding of some of maybe the complex language in the actual poem. So, you know, don't get too carried away with just having lots of activities to talk about. Do show the interviewer that you're really interested in the language and the imagery of the poem or the literature that you're looking at. If it's English, but obviously if it's maths, if it's another subject, it's that kind of subject knowledge that's really important. And the government are making a special emphasis on this. So that, I think that will be across the board in nearly every interview you have.
Thank you, Dr. Francis. And Habon, do you have anything to add there?
My top tip would be make sure you prepare, make sure you have experience in the classroom before applying for any type of teacher training course. Because I feel like once you go into your assessment process and you're in the interview stage, if you have no experience in the classroom, even if you can try do a day, it will be good to show that, you know, you're in it for the long term, because they don't want to, I feel like they don't want to accept people that haven't had experience in the classroom. Just show that you've had experience, know what a classroom environment looks like. So they really promoted us before applying to make sure we have experience in the classroom. So that would be a top tip I would give.
Thank you, everyone. And finally, Zainab.
I think everyone's kind of covered the main points. I think I would just like to add, have an answer for, like, you're going to get asked probably most likely, like, why do you want to get into teaching? And I know it seems very basic and very simple, but sometimes people might not really think about the answer to that, and it kind of catches off guard. I know it caught me off guard. Like, you have all these fantastic reasons, like you've obviously done a personal statement, but having a nice, sharp, quick, really good answer for that question would be really good as well.
Perfect, thank you so much. And we'll just jump into the next question. How much teaching did you do at the start of your career? So I guess the first year when you were teaching, when you first entered the classroom as trainee teachers. For some of you, it would have been a couple of years ago. For some, it would have been a long time ago. But in that first year of teaching, did you, were you kind of pushed into the deep end in the first week, or did it take a bit of time slowly getting into that? We'll start this question off with Habon.
So in my university, we did something where the first week it was observation and team teach. So when I first went in the first week, for the first 2 days, I was just like observing the classroom teacher, which was my mentor. And then we did team teach. So we chose subjects that we would like teach together. So it kind of gave us, like, we were both standing at the front of the classroom. So it kind of gave you a bit of confidence and like working with the teacher. And then from then on, it kind of just slowly progressed. So the next week, it would be like 2 lessons, and then it just kind of added up. The percentage just slowly like started to rise until towards the end you're kind of teaching like a good 60 to 70%. But we never got that far because of Corona. But yeah, that was what the aim was. Yeah, so it was kind of like a slow build up, which was good. Yeah.
So kind of like exposing you slowly to the environment. Perfect.
Yeah, it was slowly exposing you into it. Yeah, so it was good.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. And then Dr. Francis, in your experience, working with young teachers, how does that first couple of months of training, or the first year of training, go in terms of, like Habon mentioned before?
Yeah, so just to recap, in a PGCE, you typically do 40 days school hours in college, that's school hours, and then you'll do 40 days for your first placement, as it were, in the autumn term, certainly at Goldsmiths, and then 40 days in the spring term, and then 40 days in the summer term. So you clock up 120 days overall to get QTS. And at Goldsmiths, they do it differently at different places. We gradually build your hours up. So you'll first of all at Goldsmiths come in to college, and you'll be working 9 to 4:35 in college, being trained up for the first 2 or 3 weeks. Then in early October, you get placed in a school, and you work with a mentor, an experienced teacher, and they give you maybe 1 or 2 hours per week to teach. You'll be timetabled typically between 11 and 13 hours, and the rest of the time you're off timetable working on your assignments and things like that. Usually coming into college once a week, typically Fridays, and you build up your hours to about 11 to 13 hours a week teaching after that autumn half term. And then you're sort of assessed in the first phase. And then the second phase, usually after Christmas, you do the same thing in another school. So you build up your hours 1 to 2 hours a week, and then you build up to about 11 to 13 hours teaching week. I should say that is a half timetable. A typical teacher, I was teaching most of the time, I was teaching between 25 hours, 26 hours a week, because it was quite back to back, without responsibilities. So you're teaching half timetable, but that's really important time because you need to be doing lots of research and stuff like that for your assignments if you're doing a PGC. With the school direct route, it will be different. Your contact hours in school will be higher. Okay, so it depends what you want, as it has already been mentioned. Do you want a more sort of theoretical academic approach, which I would argue is the best approach, or do you want a more hands-on, just getting a lot of experience? And I guess there are pros and cons with both of those approaches. One approach is, you really get an intellectual understanding of how children learn and why they're learning, and you have time to reflect on a lot of different things. Whereas the other approach is very much practice, and you do get time to reflect, but it's a different way of doing things. So, when you're at interview, do take time to think about what approach is going to be best for your skill set. What approach is going to motivate you.
I think you touched on essentially the two different routes, and you can represent the academic approach, and this means more of a hands-on approach with United.
I'd beg to differ with that one. So, and the reason why I would beg to differ is that, we're lucky that we have got some great academics with Goldsmiths University who offer our PGCE. So we do have the best of both worlds. So we, on a school-based training provision, everybody's going to be different in terms of what their delivery model looks like. But what we recognised is that we're going to get people who were career changers, people who had families, who wanted to make sure that actually there was a consistency in their in the program. So we do all our training, whether it's the university or whether it's our training itself, on a Friday. So every Friday would be, I think it's a fantastic Friday. You just get through lots of theory with the academics from Goldsmiths University. Then you have a lot of practical experience as well with our lots of our teachers. So I think either way is important, but I think school-based routes are practical. That's right, and you are straight in a school from September through to July. You are with that school generally, but you do a lot of theory as well, because we do encourage all our trainees to do the PGCE, because without that, actually, most teachers in the country, myself and Francis, examples of that, would have to have done your QTS and your PGCE or a Bachelor of Education. So it's really important to not market yourself out, for future, for you not to have done your for your own development to do the PGCE. So we are very much theory informed in terms of everything that we do, and that's what a lot of school-based providers will be doing as well. So yeah, that in a nutshell, that's the school-based system. But I think there's been a disconnect for people thinking actually the theory is only in at university. No, you get the theory because we work in partnership with the university, but you also get the practical approach as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Yasmin. And yeah, jumping to the next question for Zainab, which is, working as a secondary school teacher, do you work with all ages, all year groups? And what approach do you take with different year groups? Is it kind of like a steady approach and you work, the same way with year 11s as you do with year 7s? Or do you have to tailor your methods in each class?
Thanks. Yeah, so I did the schools direct route. So I started off teaching when I first started straight into the classroom with year 7 and 8. And so I slowly learned, with every lesson you kind of learn, like, I know like there's often this idea with younger kids being a lot different. I think there are challenges with younger kids too. I think it just depends on the class, and it's more tailored to the class than it is the year group. I think that's something that I really learned as well. Generally, older kids, I think when I get to like year 10, year 11, mainly year 11, they start to buckle down and like take things more seriously. So it does get a little bit easier. Year 9 is that year, but yeah, you do have to definitely tailor your approach to the class and the students, because even in a different class, obviously maths is like ability sets. So you might be teaching a set 2 year 8 class will be very different to a set 5 year 10 class. So it really, really does depend on the class more than anything else.
Thank you, Zainab. Similar question for Harborne. Obviously, when you work in the primary school, you work with the same year group all year. Do you work with? Are you going to work with a particular year group for the first couple of years of your career, or do you kind of get the opportunity to choose?
So you get in primary school, you're in one class. So it's one class that you have throughout all the subjects that you're teaching them. So you can work in any different year groups. So you can work in year 1, year 2, or up to year 6 or reception. But so I'm working in year 1 in my NQT year. I want to stay in year 1 for the next academic year as well, just so I can get a good foundation and experience in year 1. But from then you can ask to move around and work in a different range of year groups throughout the school. So it'd be good to get experience in different year groups. But I think at least 2 years in the same year group would give you a good foundation of how and experiencing that class, because it all depends on the class that you get, because a year 6 class is going to be totally different to a year 1 class. So it's about knowing the curriculum as well, based on like what you're teaching those children. So it's good to do pre-research and like know what the curriculum is and what you're meant to be teaching them throughout the year. So yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. And this is a question for Yasmin. Why did you want this event to happen? Was it because of the possible barriers to teaching for young Somali people, or was it inspired by your experiences and you wanted to kind of give your
I wanted it to happen because I feel I never, it's something Francis touched upon, I never really got to meet many Somali teachers throughout my career. I started teacher training many moons ago, 94. In fact, no, sorry, I qualified in 94. So I have been teaching for a long time, and in that time, I've probably only met a handful that I've actually worked in the same school as or organisation. I was lucky enough actually that Zainab was on the course, and I think she was a bit surprised when she met me, and I don't want that surprise to happen. You know, it should be that actually we can become teachers, we can become head teachers in schools, we can become leads of school-centred initial teacher training, we can become lecturers at university delivering the, you know, Sahara, who's one of my colleagues that Francis trained, she should be a lecturer at university in the future. You know, why can't she? And why don't we see more people of Somali heritage doing that? So that's why I wanted this. But yeah, you know, I think it's really important for us to be seen and heard, because too often we hide away. I'm guilty of that. If it wasn't for Bar, who actually tried to get me to come out of my shell, really, out here, I wouldn't have done things like this. So it's really important. There is a question later on. There's a lady who's asked a question about Teach First, so I'll answer that later. But I don't know if Francis wants to add anything on what I've just said there.
Yeah, can I just echo exactly what you're saying? I do think it's so important to have, you know, people from Somalian community and diverse backgrounds generally, much more in teaching, and also just that, you know, I think that got my experience at Goldsmiths is that, you know, the achievement, the wonderful things, you know, like as you mentioned, Sahara has done, is great, and they bring. We just need a much more sort of culturally diverse, rich and reflective kind of workforce generally. And I think this is a really, really massively important issue. So just encourage anyone who's interested wholeheartedly to, you know, apply for whatever program you're interested in. And, you know, I think that we are conscious that there may be quite significant barriers, and we will really work our socks off to try and overcome them in whatever way. If that does mean in appropriate moments as an admissions tutor, we can consider, you know, that maybe the qualifications aren't an immediate best fit, but we can see in the interview and application that, you know, you're going to be a fantastic teacher. So just really, really massively encourage anyone who's listening, just have a go, apply, just get in the and get a feel for the things at the interview, talk to us, ask us questions, you know, just and say, be honest, you know, say, is this for me? Oh, I feel maybe it isn't, and we'll talk it through and talk through the issues. And I just feel really, really confident that there's so much amazing talent that we're just not tapping at the moment. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Francis. And I've got the question here. I probably should have mentioned this at the beginning, but I am not a teacher. I'm an accounting and finance student. And do my placement on in the Students' Union at Manchester Metropolitan University. But we've got a question here which is using, well, I'll just read it. What is the difference between QTLS and QTS? Yasmin or Dr. Francis Gilbert, I'll let you both tap into that one.
Do you want me to answer that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
Please go ahead.
Well, I'm not a total expert in this area because all of my acronyms can get twisted around. But QTS is Qualified Teacher Status. That any government recognised teacher training qualification will give you, including the PGCE. QTLS is usually given to people working in further education. So that's a slightly different thing, although it's become a little bit academic because I believe that, you know, with a QTS, you can still work in FE now because they changed the regulations. So, but do double check things. You know, whoever's the admissions tutor at your course can help you. I mean, those sorts of questions I do refer onto my head of program if I'm not entirely certain. But yeah, obviously it is important, and just be a bit proactive to get the qualification you are actually looking for. So if you are looking for teaching and further education, just double check with the people you're applying to that you can go on and teach in further education in you know, sixth form college, but that's certainly the case at Goldsmiths. You know, we have people who go on to further education.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Francis. We've got questions from Imran here. I'll divide it into two parts and kind of assign people different parts of the question. But it's, hi all, I'm about to start my training with Teach First this summer. How is the Teach First program different or similar to the standard PGCE qualification? So if Yasmin, you want to touch on that one? And then the second question is, do you have any top tips, pardon me? And that question was also asked earlier on. So Habon first, and then Zainab, do you want to answer that question as well?
Okay, in terms of Teach First, I think they're doing a different qualification instead of the PGC. I can't remember. I think it's a diploma in education over 2 years that you would do that. So it's generally a 2 years that you would do this instead of doing the PGCE. It's school based, so Teach First will register you with a school. You'll be I think you don't get to decide exactly which school you're going to go to. It will be assigned for you, but they're a great team of people who do work with a variety of different schools in areas of disadvantage. So I would say that you would have a higher teaching load than somebody on a school direct or or just from a university led route. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, can I add something?
Pardon me. Please go ahead, Francis.
Maybe well, to echo, and Yasmin was absolutely correct in correcting me that if you do a kind of school direct at Goldsmiths, it's basically the same as doing a PGCE. But I'd say like the Teach First is a lot more sort of hands-on, so you get this intensive, typically training for 6 weeks, and then you're put into school, and then you have these kind of periodical sort of meetings back with the Teach First team. Typically that's how it works, and they change year to year. So the model is very much sort of like getting hands-on experience, and you usually are on a wage and then placed where they decide to place you. So the model is, I would say, possibly, you know, much more about getting kind of practice in school, and there'll be less time for that sort of reflection typically that you might get in the PGCE course. So it is a different kind of approach. Perfect.
Thank you, Dr. Francis. And then yeah, we'll hand over to Habon now to answer a question about any top tips that she might have for someone starting off their first career in teaching, or even as well, we've got a question that says, do you have any top tips in the application process as well? So if you want to touch on both of them.
I think I have a couple of top tips. One top tip is before your placement, make sure you do research on the school. Find out as much as you can about the school that you're going into. If you can, give a call before you're going in. Ask about the dress code, because different schools have different dress codes. Ask if they would like you to bring anything like that. Just make sure that you've done enough research as much as you can before going in. And I would say get involved as much as you can on your placements, like any extra activities that you could get involved in, any type of like school things that are going on, get involved and collect everything as proof, because you could use it for your teacher standards. Ask for help. These people are there to help you, like your mentors, your university lecturers, whatever type of course you go on to. Like, these people have chosen you because they would like you to become a successful teacher. And I think that we all sometimes are afraid to ask for help, but like in my course, there was no such thing as a silly question. So if you needed help, you ask for it. If you see somebody that has a good resource, you use it, you magpie. People put things out there so that people can use their resources and share it, and just take advantage of everything that's out there. There's so much out there, but we don't use it. So look for it and use it, and like apply it to your teaching. If you see a good strategy a teacher uses on Twitter, magpie it, try it in your classroom, try it on during your lessons. If it goes wrong, it's okay. Reflect on it, you know. I do a reflective journal, which is like at the end of the day, I would write what went well, what didn't go well, and what I wanted to work on during my course. And sometimes I would sit there and write paragraphs. Sometimes I would write just a sentence. It doesn't have to be as intense as it sounds. It's just something that you could like offload, because it is a lot for any type of course you do, whichever route. So it's just sitting there, writing it down. It kind of offloads for you, and it kind of lets you reflect. And I think that's why I like the academic route, because they really like push the emphasis on being a reflective practitioner. So yeah, assessment process, I would say make sure you become prepared. Come as prepared as you can, because what my assessment process was is that we did a literacy test. After our literacy test, we did like a group work, and that, I think that was a focus on your communication and how you work well as a team. And then after that, we had a one-to-one interview. And I think as you need to prepare as much and know as much as you can, subject knowledge, just about the course, so that you could show your enthusiasm and your ambition, like how much you want this, which will impress the people that are accepting you. So there's my top tips.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. And Zainab, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I think Habon covered quite a lot of it, to be honest. I think my main thing that helped me a lot with my first year was just observing people. Like, I cannot stress this enough, but getting, like, it might seem like I was quite fortunate, and I think a lot of schools are like this now, where there's like an open door policy where you can just walk into someone's classroom. Obviously, it'd be nice to give them a bit of notice and say, hey, can I just come and watch your lesson? Most of the time, like, people are just really okay with it. You just sit at the back. You know, sometimes there's a sheet that you can fill in, or even a notepad. Just take things, like Bon said, like you don't have to, you're not the first person to do this, so you shouldn't like act like it. You should kind of ask for help, see something you like, oh, I really like how you did that, have a discussion, catch up with that teacher. They have years on you, and it would really make your life easier if they could kind of, you know, teach you the ropes and things that you like. In terms of the application process, I think making sure, like Habon said, like be prepared, research your school, like know, you know, every school is different, demographics different, the needs of the kids are different. So knowing that will definitely give you that advantage. Most of this information you can get online anyway. The Gov websites on the schools, they have a lot of information about those schools. And also, like I said, like, why you want to get into teaching, they can see passion. Like, I don't know, Yasmin interviews quite a lot of people. Like, you can see those people that are just doing it for the sake of doing it, and people who are genuinely interested and passionate about working with children. And that should really come across when you're doing your interview.
Perfect. Thank you, Zainab. And we've got a question from Zainab, which is, hi there, when you receive all your offers uni-based, how do you choose where you study? I feel stuck with making a decision. Obviously, Dr. Francis, you work at, I've forgotten, but you work at, pardon me, Goldsmith University, PGC lead there. I'm sure Goldsmith is an incredible university, but I'm sure every university has their benefits and drawbacks. How do you advise students choose the university they want to work at?
I think do go to a certain extent with your intuition. I mean, I do think it's important that you choose a place that is going to fit your kind of personality, because I would say the PGC year is, I've got to be honest, is a grueling year. It's a difficult year. There's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of academic work. There's the teaching can be tricky. And so, you know, finding a course where, you know, like the course leaders I can relate to them. If I've got a problem, I feel like I'm going to be able to talk to them and sort it out. You know, if you're so don't necessarily go with the one with the so-called best reputation. If you've spoken to an admissions tutor, you know, and you've connected with them and you thought, oh yeah, if I had an issue, I could actually go and talk to them and get that sorted out, rather than, you know, perhaps you might have been interviewed by people who are not so warm, friendly, possibly, you know, and you think, oh, you know, I might be a bit lost here. So it depends on that. I think the great advantage of the PGCE course is you do form very strong relationships with the college staff, who can sort things out if there are issues that come up, and that, you know, or a school direct system where you've got kind of leaders where, you know, for whatever reason, sometimes things in schools don't work out for very complex reasons, and you may need to find another placement, and you need to just work with, you know, the person that's running the course to sort that out. And we at Goldsmiths, we are massively proud of the fact that, you know, when there have been issues, we've been able to sort them out and keep people on track. And yeah, so look, people just generally don't drop out because we're able to support them. So again, you know, those sorts of things are really important.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Francis. And a similar question, I guess, is, you know, when you're going out to work and working directly with an academy like United Learning, what do you think sets United Learning apart, Yasmin?
I think that we care about every one of our trainees, so that is definitely something that I'm, you know, we're with them every step of the way. So I recruit, I train, I develop, and then we're with them up through into their NQT year, even if they're not with us at the moment. I think it's really important that I think you've got to recognise that teaching is difficult, and the first few years are challenging. And we talk a lot about child development, but actually teacher development is really important, and understanding that the cognitive process in that time of when you're first going into a school, you've got to find out about not just your university bits, but you need to know about how, you know, where the layout of the school, you need to know about the school day, when you're doing break duties, lunch duties. So what we try to do is making sure that, for example, every Monday morning, that there's a message I send out to all my trainees. So all of my trainees get that. That's 180 across the country. You know, it's from Carlisle right down to Bournemouth, and they get the same message from myself. And I think it's really important that at the end of that, Habon said that, you know, it's really important that they recognise no question is too small. No, not at all. Ask for help sooner rather than later. And I don't know if that's Dankena, like and that means Francis, culture, but we're very much, you know, Somalis are very much really good at asking for help or just asking a question. And sometimes actually, I found it a real struggle when I first started teaching, in that I was culturally, I'm Northerner, but I found it really culturally different going into schools and just saying, I don't understand that. What do you mean by that? You know, and just being quite, you know, curious all the time. Schools have got better now at people being mindful of other people and just understanding that sometimes we don't have a clue. We just want somebody to tell us. Haban said something earlier about dress code. I remember when I first started to do teacher training, one of my trainees, people commenting about what she was wearing, and it wasn't formal enough, but nobody had the courtesy to say anything to her. You know, how do people know unless you are explicit? And that's what I think is really important with a good provider, just that clarity and also that compassion. Clarity and compassion are two things I think that are really important in schools. And we lose people because I think, you know, life is just too fast. And I think times people just need to step back and just listen carefully to what a trainee teacher is saying to them. But you know, we do need more people in, but they have got to recognise that actually, if you can bear with it and you recognise that this is a fleeting moment in time, it will get better. But sometimes they just don't want to hear that from somebody like me who's done it and gone through that journey.
Thank you, Yasmin. That's really helpful. I think, you know, from my perspective, I can kind of see the passion oozing out of all of you, and you clearly all love the job, which really helps. Which actually perfectly leads on to our next question from Hibar. which is she wants to know more about the work-life balance, because Yasmin, you touched on there, and so did Dr. Francis, in terms of losing teachers and how there's quite a high turnover there. But I just wanted to ask Zainab, when you were undertaking the PGCE or your particular route, how does it differ? Pardon me, I just started to read. Yeah, I just had another question pop up. But what's the work-life balance like, basically, when you first start your PGCE, and what top tips can you give to allow people to make the most out of their experience?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Something I didn't really consider in my first year. I'm not gonna just kind of get into it. But I did a schools direct route, so I was doing my PGC alongside my QTS. So I worked with United Teaching, and I've started off with just 2 classes, and although now looking back is actually like laughable because of how much time it took me to plan a lesson, when you start, everything is going to take you so much longer than it will like when you get comfortable. So I think a good rule of thumb that someone told me that was quite useful was it shouldn't take you more than the time, however long the lesson is, it shouldn't take you more than that time to, seriously sit down and plan it. Write things out. Obviously, things will, when you have observations, things will take you longer. But I think trying to carve out some time for yourself is like a non-negotiable. My mentor said this to me in my first year, and I thought it was really good. You need to kind of find what type of teacher you are. If you're someone that likes to stay later in school, finish everything that you want to do in school, and then therefore you don't take any work home with you. That's something that I found quite useful. Like I'd stay however late I wanted to a given day, and then go home, and then that's it. No work. Switch off my email. That's it. And then some people prefer to go home earlier. I know most schools are okay with you leaving after your meetings are done. There's no like set time that you have to stay. Obviously, it depends on the school. You leave early, take some work home with you, and in your own time on your couch, you just do a bit of planning. It would, I can't lie to you and say that your first year is going to be easy. It is challenging, but you got to stick it through. It is something that you're just going to have to find what works for you. I used to think, or when I saw some of my kids going home and they were doing work on weekends, and I'm like, oh my god, I should be doing something on the weekend. But then I'm like, I'm doing the work at work, so that's my time. I don't know how it was for you, Habon, what you did, but that was what I found quite useful.
Yeah, I think we'll ask Habon to jump in now. What was it like for you in your first year? What did you learn and take into your second year?
I feel like in the beginning, you just have a plan, and you're like, oh, because in the beginning you're always like, I'll come in organized, but it does pile up. So one thing I would say is just plan. So you have to keep on top of your work, which is everything that Zainab was saying. Plan your lessons in plenty of time. Start your assignments as soon as you can. As soon as they're giving you something for your assignments, start it. Even if you're just slowly going, doing it slowly. It's better to do it bit by bit than sitting there the night before typing and trying to finish it all. I would say you can't pour from an empty cup. You need time for yourself. So make sure you're staying organized, find out what works for you, as Zainab said. If staying late at school works for you, coming in early, working on the weekend, if that's something that works for you, find out how you work, but always make sure you pencil in time for yourself. If you have an evening where you just sit down and you detox and just have time for yourself, but you just have to find out what works for you, but try and stay as organized as you can and keep on top of it. Because if you fall behind, then it's very hard to catch up in a PGCE, and then it just makes it more stressful, which makes you feel like you can't do it, which is why people end up dropping out. So it's just a domino effect.
But I should say that you can always take a bit of time off and you need to talk to your tutor. So it's really important, if you are struggling, that you will get the PGCE. So I do think that's often, there may well be cultural barriers to people sort of seeking that type of help. So I think it's really, really important that you go into the course thinking, well, if I can't fit it all in that year, maybe, consider you might need to do a bit more time, to get it finished. And that's why we have such a good completion record at Goldsmiths to a certain extent, is that if people have struggled, we've been able to give them a bit of a break and then they've been able to come back and finish.
Thank you so much, Dr. Francis and Havon. We've actually got a question for Dr. Francis as well. Can you share some of your experiences of training Somali teachers and what universities could do to encourage more?
Yeah, I mean, I've just only had tremendously positive experiences of training British Somalian teachers from that cultural background. You know, they've just, every single one has been amazing. And I would say the key thing for me is, and this is sort of like drawing a bit in the way of the theory, is maybe courses that draw on people's funds of knowledge. That's what we call this idea where, you know, you allow people to bring their own backgrounds into the classroom. And I think this is good practice in school, and I think it's good practice in university. And in fact, in the moment in the chat, I can put a link to a free anthology I did through my course, where two Somalian teachers, actually, Samaya and Muna, wrote their own personal language histories, and it might be interesting for you to look at, because they had a moment on the course to sort of reflect on their own amazing sort of linguistic histories and their own cultural backgrounds, and they were able to share that and really celebrate that and have that published. And I think that's just really, really good practice. So courses that really value and give people of all backgrounds a chance to sort of celebrate and value their own sort of funds of knowledge is important. So I'm just putting that, I'll put that in the chat and you can have a look there. But yeah, obviously Sahara, it was an absolute star, and she's invited me along to talk on this, and I'm sure she would, you know, possibly she would have comments too. She was a PGC English student I've trained.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Francis. We had a lot of really good nuggets of information today. I just want to remind everyone that you can follow us on our Twitter page, the Twitter page, Be Some Educators. I think we'll be tagging everyone, all the panelists today, on their Twitter accounts. And if you do feel like you want to answer some specific questions, you can do so. But we still do have the comment section open. So please carry on putting your questions through there as well. Thank you. And just the next question, I think, is one for everyone. How do students going into teaching improve their subject knowledge, and what top tips can you give on that front? Yasmin, you touched on it earlier in terms of people being able to have going to specific courses before they do their teacher training, but do you have any other tips?
Are you talking about subject knowledge, Shuaib?
Yeah, pardon me. Yeah, subject knowledge.
I think it's the bread and butter, really, of teaching. You cannot. The one thing that I would say is it's the one thing that you cannot let go. You are developing your subject knowledge as you go along, but you need to have some. So, for example, I always find it fascinating that when I'm recruiting history trainees, for example, they might have got a first class degree in history, but then as soon as they start teaching, they will have to do something to do with medieval history. And that's not something that they will have touched on their degrees. So I think it's really important that although you have a specialism, there will be things on the curriculum itself that you need to look carefully at what you will be teaching. Most schools now will have their curriculum on their website. So it would be advantageous for people to have a look at that, have a look at the national curriculum. Most universities, in terms of PGC, will look at a module on curriculum, and especially in your subject area. So I would say, just delve into what the history of your curriculum is for your particular subject as well. The other thing is, one top tip that I would say, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, pardon me, it's my bad.
One top tip that I would say to people is, there are, with lockdown and lockdown teaching, there are some really good examples of people giving lessons online, and just having a look at how they've delivered those lessons would be a good top tip as well. So, you can say what you like about Oak National Academy, but you can actually have a look at how they teach lessons and that clarity of explanation in their subjects, and how they've broken it down to young people is brilliant. So have a look at that, because that'll be some sort of presentation or some sort of assessment that you've got to do. So have a look at how they do it.
Thank you, Yasmin.
On
yeah, please go on.
I was always really quite self-conscious about subject knowledge, because I did, and a lot of people don't, like, now you will find that do a degree and then teach a subject that's slightly different as well. I did a subject knowledge enhancement, but my degree is actually sociology with criminology, and I ended up teaching, I did maths at A-level and I ended up teaching it. I think something that people don't really talk about is you feel quite self-conscious, obviously, teaching it at GCSE, but observing people, number one, asking questions, doing questions yourself, and actually sitting down and doing the work that the children are doing, it gives you an advantage, because having a degree in a subject is good, but like Yasmin said, it's very different to teaching it at GCSE. And something that people that do something at a degree, or quite a good specialists at something, struggle with is understanding why the children find it challenging. And coming from a background where, I didn't do maths as a degree, I think it kind of, I realized it became an advantage that I had, sitting and understanding, finding something difficult myself and sitting there understanding how to do it is what helped me to, sort of engage with children that didn't understand something or came from lower ability sets as well. So I think if you don't understand something, you should kind of see that as a strength, because that now gives you the opportunity to go and learn it and better prepare for your lessons, rather than feeling as though, I've got a degree in something, I should be fine teaching at GCSE, or whatever you're teaching at primary school, like it will be different.
Perfect. Thank you, Sam. And we've got a question here. Can you share your personal experiences about one or two of the challenges during your training year or career? These can be universal, they can be specific to Somalis, regarding representation, role models, mentors, etc. Habon, do you want to start us off with that one?
A challenge that I would say, or like an experience that I had, was during my course, I didn't have any representation. So I didn't see any representation in my university. So it was quite a shock going into an environment where it was just like you feel visibly different, and that's why I feel like this event is important, because I want more Somali people to come into this spaces, because there is so much space, and I feel like people don't know much about, like, they need more information, and if this event is going to allow them to learn more and allow them to access and understand the different routes that they can go through, it will be lovely to go in to see Somali teachers inside these spaces, because that was a big contrast to the school that I went to, whereas the school that I went to in a placement was very diverse, and it had different ethnic backgrounds of children. So it was good to be in a school like that, especially coming from my ethnic background, and it felt like that was something that I noticed. And as well, I've noticed there's more primary school teachers that are Somali, but not as much secondary. And I don't know why that is from my personal experience. I don't know if you guys would know more about that, but that is something that I've noticed.
That actually leads perfectly on to the next question, which was, there's a clear disparity between Somali teachers in primary schools and secondary schools. Yasmin, you've unmuted yourself. I'm guessing you have something to say on the topic.
It's my biggest frustration, Habon. It's my biggest frustration. I just don't understand why people don't want to go into secondary. Haven't got a clue. Zainab, go on. We've had this conversation this week.
Yeah. You know what? With my sister's doing her primary. She's applying to do primary, and Yasmin's been trying to convince her to do secondary. And it's the same thing that keeps coming up. Oh my god, the kids are rude. That's like the first thing that everyone says. Kids are rude. Oh my god, I don't know how you do secondary. Like, I think we forget that we were once in that position. Like, I don't think any of us intentionally violated our teachers. I don't know if anyone did, but you understand like that once you're working with kids, like they put up this tough front, like this kind of like, it's a coping mechanism for most, but the more you work with them, you'll see that they're actually like quite vulnerable, especially the more vulnerable kids, and they get attached quite quickly. They're really actually quite sweet. I mean, it might not seem it when you're telling them off or they're in trouble in that moment, but they do get really attached and they are really, really sweet. So I think if getting like I think Habon said, try and get as much experience as you can. You won't find out what you like until you do it. So do primary experience, do go into a secondary school, work with the kids, and often you'll find when you're at the back of the classroom, they do talk to you more. They're quite curious about who you are and what you're doing there. So if you go in, into a secondary school, if you can get the experience and the exposure, do it, because you will love it and you will find it fun. I enjoy it. I don't know how Habon's experience is, if she's done any secondary experience.
Perfect. Habon, do you have anything to add there? Please feel free to.
So I would say, I think one of the things, I always wanted to work with children. So like, that's a main reason why I went into primary. But I think one thing that, like, when I speak to other people about it is because in secondary, you're focusing on one subject. It's a lot of subject knowledge, and I think that it just comes off as daunting to people, where they're just like, and then it mix that with children that are quite older that will give talk back. I think that's why they feel a bit like, oh, I don't know, like, and a bit skeptical about it. But I think that leading on to what Zainab said is getting the experience, going to a volunteer or just experience a classroom setting in secondary, and experience it. Because I know that my auntie works in a secondary school, and she says that she loves it because when she children will be like, "Are you Somali?" And it's just that having that representation of these children, knowing that someone like that looks like them is a teacher and is in that position and is educating them, and in that space, which shows them that they can be in that space too. So yeah.
The one thing that I would add on to that is I don't want it to be a shock to them. The amount of times I've been in a classroom or come in on visiting schools, and a Somali student sees me, and then it's like, and then I'll hear that classic Somali word when you shout after somebody beginning with W, and I just think, oh, can you not? Would you do that to somebody else? Why would you do that? And I think that's why it's really, Francis, there's this Somali, if you're saying oi to somebody, you go oi, but it's always masculine. I don't know why, because the female side of it is always negative. So if they go warrior, it's like, why would you do that? Why would you do that? So I think that's because it's such a shock to students sometimes when they do see a Somali teacher. So it's not a great thing. So I would definitely encourage people to go into teaching, so that actually, I think one thing that I did when I first started teaching was go to somewhere that didn't, had no representation whatsoever in a county, Lincolnshire. And I did that for about 7 years. And it was the best thing ever, because when I left there, they all knew my heritage. They could all know something about Somali food. They could all talk a few words of Somali, all the positive things. And I think anything that we can do to get people to understand more about us instead of the kind of stereotypes that you see in the media would be great.
Thank you, Yasmin. I've got a question here for Dr. Francis. What does a normal week look like for someone starting off as a trainee teacher, the first couple of months?
Okay, so you have first of all, usually time in college, and then that it will be school hours. I think that's really important to stress. You're not, when you're in college, you're not doing, some university courses can seem a bit part-time because, you know, just got a few lectures to attend and things like that. But you know, PGCE course, you are full-time, 9 to 4, 5 lectures, doing a lot of different things. Then when you're in school, you will be timetabled typically between 11 and 13 hours a week to be in lessons, and most courses build that up over time. Some courses you need to check will be expecting you to teach straight away. Certainly not, I don't think Yasmin's school direct course or mine, you know, which follow the Goldsmiths model, but you know, some do. So do check on that, depending on where you're applying. You know, it's a good question to ask, you know, how much will I be expected to teach straight away? If you are someone who wants to get straight into the classroom and straight teaching, great. If you're being expected to teach, you know, 11 to 13 hours straight away. If you are someone who feels they need a bit more time to prepare and learn, then you probably need to be going to a course that will guide you through slowly to teach over time. So typically after half term of the autumn term, you know, in late October, usually early November, you'll be teaching 11 to 13 hours, having built up over time how to teach and learn how to plan things. And then you have the rest of the time off timetable to work with your mentor, to go into college, to work on your assignments. It is, I've got to be honest, and in fact, I was talking to some student reps just last week about this. It is a tricky year. You know, you are expected to work hard. It's a very, very enjoyable year, I think, for lots of people. And they say, you know, they learn more often in their PGCE year than they've learned in years, you know, because the learning is exponential. You really learn so much as a teacher, and it is very enjoyable, but it is hard work. And I think I would just like to echo what Zainab was saying. I think she was absolutely on the nail. It's having what I would call a growth mindset is really important. And growth mindset is just the idea that I can learn through my mistakes. So with subject knowledge, I like to illustrate this. I'm sorry, I'm not meaning to patronize you, by little puppets. Now, often, you know, people expect a magic wizard to just wave a wand and give them the subject knowledge they need, as it were. And actually that wizard doesn't exist. He's a bit of a phony. So you will need at times to grapple with your inner devil, your inner thoughts. There will be times when you'll have doubts, you know, and it is your ability to learn to accept them and to be, I would say, I've got Bing Bong here, who represents childhood sensibility, to be playful and to learn through mistakes like a child learns. You know, they make a mistake, they get back again on their bike and they try it again. And you do get a few knocks and bruises along the way, but it is fun. And I think having that attitude, that sort of almost that playful growth mindset attitude, those are the people that succeed. You know, I can say, hand on heart, Sahara was just so like that. You know, she was just really positive, had a growth mindset, willing to learn, and that really makes a big difference. So there's my little puppet show for the day.
Thank you, Dr. Francis. That was really good. I like that. I just want to say thank you to Zainab for joining us today. I think she might be leaving us soon, but do you have any final pieces of advice that you want to give, or any final thoughts before you leave?
Yeah, I think everything that everyone has said is just really spot on. Like, don't be afraid to make mistakes, as Dr. Francis said. Like Habon said, like, ask questions. No question is ever too small. And yeah, we definitely do need more Somali teachers so that the kids stop asking us like, oh my God, are you Somali? Like that question just, so yeah, definitely get involved. Please don't shy away from secondary. I promise you they're not as rude as they look. So yeah. I really have to go, so bye guys.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Zainab, for joining us. See you later. Speak soon. Bye. Okay, we've got 15 minutes left, so we'll start to close with a few questions. But I just wanted to finally focus off on one final subject, which is observations. So, firstly, Habon, how did you find it being observed? and then we'll ask Yasmin and Dr. Francis to kind of touch on the actual observation side of things. But what was your experience like when you've been observed as a teacher?
I think observations are always daunting. Even now in my NQT, you still get observed. So I feel like you're still stressed. Like, I don't think I don't know if I'll ever, like, even in the future, if I'm being observed, not feel like, oh, it's like very nerve-wracking. But one thing that I really loved doing was during my courses, annotating my lesson plan as I went. So like just scribbling and writing, oh, that went well, that didn't go well, just like writing as much as you can on it. And even if it looks like a mess at the end, you could sit back at the end and reflect on like what went well, what did not go well. Because sometimes your transition time you might have ended up sitting talking for so long, and then the children have so little time to do their work. But sometimes it will go wrong. Like there's no harm in a lesson going bad. Like in the beginning, one time I had a bad lesson and I cried, but my mentor spoke to me after and she was like, it's fine. Like so you're not going to have a perfect lesson. Like the whole point of this experience, and even throughout teaching, is to learn. You're learning through, you're always learning. Some things will go well, some things won't go well. So I don't think that you should be put off if a lesson doesn't go as perfect to plan. Sometimes you'll have a lesson plan, and I've had a lesson plan and I just stopped, like, because it just wasn't working. Sometimes it won't work for your class. And I think that it's not about, it's about meeting the learning objective and making sure that the children are understanding what you are talking about. It's not about having a perfect lesson with perfect transition and perfect work at the end. And that's why I think that I learned from observations. So don't like work yourself too much work yourself like about the observations. I feel like you just, experience it, enjoy the lesson that you've planned, because even though someone is watching you, they're only watching you to see like how you teach and like to give you advice and like how to reflect on and how to better your lesson. So
thank you, Habon. Dr. Francis, do you have anything to add there on the observation side of teaching? Pardon me.
Yeah, I would just echo exactly what Habon has been saying. Really great words. I would say it is important to be aware, with Goldsmiths and most courses, you're not expected to deliver, magic straight away. The course that we run is very, very carefully structured. So it is criteria for judging you in lessons is things like, that you're showing awareness that there are behavior management techniques at the beginning of the course when you're being observed, awareness that there are ways of, adapting your teaching to meet children's needs, and showing your awareness through the planning and things like that will often be enough. And we're not expecting you to deliver, something amazing in a day. And so it does take time. It really does, and that patience is important. So I seriously don't think most people should expect that they're delivering amazing lessons in those first 2 terms, because generally it doesn't happen. It takes a time, and usually it's by the 3rd term when people are starting to crack the lesson planning and things like that they're showing real evidence of these things. So I think courses are very, very mindful of that, and the observation process is very supportive now. So the lesson grading and those sorts of things have been got rid of, so that you are just being set clear targets about what you did well and what you need to do to improve. But I'm sure Yasmin has lots of other comments as well.
Perfect. Yasmin, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I totally agree with what Francis is saying. I think observations are subjective. So we don't want to turn, developing teachers like Habon into mini Francis and mini Yasmins. We want you to develop your own identity in the classroom, and that is really important. I think that this is where the beauty of you have some theory, so you could, you might be discussing motivation, because I think sometimes motivation it's not a behavior issue as such. it's the motivation, it's the why that students are trying to find about what they're learning in the classroom. So having that theory regarding motivation that you will be discussing within your PGCE, and then actually going into the classroom and seeing how over a period of time, because it's not magic overnight, that you develop relationships with the class, how you devise and develop your lessons. It will take time, but the one thing that I would always say is practice. Practice and develop, and do what Habon is saying, which is annotate and think actually what is working well for that. I can't remember who said it earlier, something about a particular class, you know, it's not a year group, it's that class, it's those students in the class. You know, you are making sure that you're looking after, and each year you're going to get another bunch of students, and each year you're going to find out what makes them tick. So I think each year will be different as you're going through your journey. But remember, even if somebody's giving you his feedback, feedback's a gift. So just take that feedback as it is. Some gifts you might return, but generally, you know, feedback is that, you know, you've got to see if it works for you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Yasmin. Well, we're coming to the end now, but I'll have one final question for you, Yasmin. Why did BSOM Educators start? And, you know, is there anything that young teachers or more senior teachers can do to get involved in the project?
Well, we started because really we're interested in, I mean, one of the reasons why we got together is because we realised as a community, we were individually helping our different communities and different schools, and especially parents who were finding it difficult to navigate the process. Then we started to get people who were interested in going into teaching, and Sahara and I and Bar realised that actually lots of information out there and it's conflicting and confusing. I don't really care how anybody wants to get into teaching, what route, whether it's university or school-led route. I just want them to become teachers, and so that representation happens. So if I see somebody who applies to me, I want to make sure that I give them the best advice, because actually it's really important that we are helping the system, and it's not just about bums on seats. So that's why we did the teacher training bit of things. And recently we're getting more people asking us, well, do you know what, I'm in it now, how do I get promoted, how do I develop, how did you do it? So those are going to be our next sessions that we will do. But we really want to make sure that actually the more that we can encourage people who are watching this now, who watched our last session last Saturday, if they can register with us, it would be great, so that we can have the mentors that we need. And those mentors really do matter. We really need to get more Somali mentors that are mentoring and supporting and being part of this whole process. So as you can see here, our Twitter handle and our email address, and one of the team will get back in contact with you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Yasmin. Well, yeah, Yasmin's mentioned that the Twitter handle is there. Everyone will be tagged that's been speaking today on the Twitter page. So if you do want to get in contact or ask any more questions, please feel free to do so. But thank you all for your questions so far. And yeah, I think we're going to end it there. But before we do end it, I was going to give everyone an opportunity to finish off with any final nuggets of information or just their regards. Francis, pardon me.
Okay, yeah, I'll bring back Bing Bong, the representation of playfulness from a very good cartoon. It's very helpful for teachers, called Inside Out, actually. And Bing Bong represents playfulness, and I do think that having that playful spirit and connecting with children is so important. And if you are one of those people who thinks that you can, you know, find your inner child and help children just generally learn from all backgrounds, then, you know, definitely have a go at applying.
And Yasmin, do you not add in that as well?
No, I would agree 100% with that, because actually being a teacher is a joy. So you know, every day, if you're not in the school and your team, for me, it's about, actually, there's nothing wrong with education, nothing wrong with teaching. It is to do with poor leadership, if I'm honest. So you've got to find the right school for you. So don't give up on teaching. You know, decide it will be about the school and the systems within a school. My main thing would be for your teacher training year, because there's so much for you to do. You've just got to, you'll get your QTS, you'll get your PGCE. With most all providers, you've got to find the provider that fits, and you've got to make sure that actually you've got a provider that's giving you that really good quality induction, because that is what is really important for you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And finally, Habon, do you have anything to add there as well?
I would just like to say, enjoy it. Enjoy the course. Like, you know, you're going to learn so much. You're going to have all this experience. You're going to have the experience with academic professionals, like people that have written books, and like, you know, have all this like world of information. Like, enjoy it. Take as much as you can. Take it in and just have fun, because it's a good year. And I would love to redo it. Like, it was an enjoyable year. So just take your time and enjoy the course.
Perfect. Thank you, Habon. Well, thank you, Dr. Francis, Habon, Yasmin, and Zainab, who left us already, for this great conversation. I'm sure we're going to have more events in the future, and you can find all the events on our Twitter page and keep up to date with that. But apart from that, I want to say thank you all and goodbye.
And I'd like to say thank you to you as well.
Yeah, definitely.
No worries. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Very well chaired. He did introduce himself at the beginning, but just explain who you are again, and hopefully we'll see you again. And hopefully I can coach you to become a teacher in the future.
We'll see. We'll see. Yeah, I'm an accounting and finance student at Manchester Metropolitan University. Currently doing my placement at the university, working on race inequality, a project manager, so working with students there.
Brilliant. Thank you.
No worries at all. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.